Miss Farah, our lecturer. My name is Antasin, and together with my group members, we have Tasita, Pavitra, as well as Shakila. So today we will be presenting about our assignment 2. So our assignment 2 is about the analysis of financial statements, which is in relation to the 2 companies that we have taken from Bursa Malaysia. So I'll pass it on to our first presenter of the day, which is Tasita, to continue with the presentation.
So I'll start with the company background. LBS Group is a leading Malaysian property developer with a good reputation for developing high quality building in Malaysia and abroad. The history behind LBS Bina dates back longer than when the Dato Lim started the construction business in Petaling Jaya. LBS is one of the most significant companies in the Malaysian business, as well expanding further outside to China, which is recognized as one of the most challenging market in the world. Not only that, LBS is currently involved in property development, but also in related industries such as property management, building supplies, and landscaping. Moving to the next slide. Yeah, it's about business activities. LBS Group has only built houses, but it also grown its development portfolio to include residential, commercial, retail, and leasing, hotel, and tourists. To begin, LBS Group is well-known home developer, having built a large number of houses, including land property. Furthermore, commercial activity has been one of the LBS Venus Group business activities. Not only that, this company leases their retail lots to business that believe purchasing their own property will cost them an arm and leg. In addition, LBS Bina Group is committed in community service by building their own service apartment, hotels, and etc. Finally, tourism is now one of the part of LBS Bina Group. So moving to the next slide. Next slide. Yeah, it's about competitors. LBS Group competes with number of Malaysian firms that offer low-cost housing, including KSL Holdings Berhad. Taraf Nusantara Sendirian Berhad is one of the competitor, and this company has already begun developing a new township in Perak, where they are attempting to set low prices of their residents. Not only that, Mas Singh Group Sendirian Berhad began to broaden their market to in affordable one. Lastly, LBS Bina Group competes with many to build inexpensive houses while satisfying the country's consumer demand. So I'll pass it to next presenter.
So hello guys, now I'll be talking about KSL Holdings Berhad. So moving on to the next slide regarding the profile and also the background of the company. So basically, KSL Holdings Berhad involved in investment holding and also provision of management services to the subsidiaries. So basically, KSL Holdings Berhad is categorized under construction services industry and also performs all aspects of development from land purchasing till final property inspection. And also, this company is established in 2000 and based in Johor Bahru. And also, this company is also listed on Bursa Malaysia under the main market. So moving on to the next slide regarding the business activities. So basically, the next slide. So basically, the core businesses is in the sectors of 4, which is property investment, property development, car park operation, and also investment holding. So basically, this company is related to many sectors, but in this assignment, we are specifying it into the construction sites. So basically, KSL Holdings Berhad is driving as a leading property developer in the country and also best known for their innovative and unmarked design, which embraces the quality and enhance the living standards. So basically, KSL Holding Berhad always wanted to give the best. So basically, they create something which gives super good quality and also unique design. So that's the specialization of KSL Holding Berhad. And KSL Holdings Berhad is also developed by an expert team of professionals that strive to meet the expectation of the livings in today's sophisticated market. And also, KSL Holding Berhad also create good and cohesive working environment between employers and also the employees to provide best and successful outcome in their business. So moving on to the next slide regarding the competitors. The competitors for KSL Holdings Berhad there are four, which is known as Crescendo Corp Berhad, Guocoland Malaysia Berhad, Kuchai Development Berhad, and also Sunway Berhad. So basically, these are the companies that are competing in their share market. So these are the example of Crescendo Corp Berhad's yearly profit. So basically, we can actually differentiate the KSL Holdings Berhad's profit and also Crescendo profits. So these are the examples of yearly profit which I've attached in it. So we could actually compare it. So the next slide. So this is for the Guocoland Malaysia Berhad. And the next one is for Kuchai Development Berhad. And also the last is for Sunway Berhad. So passing on to Pavitra Sri, she will be explaining about trend analysis.
So hi guys, I'll be talking about the trend analysis of both companies we are doing a project on. So firstly, I'll be talking about the LBS Bina Group based on the year 2019 and 2020. So for the trend analysis, we have analyzed from 4 main points, which is the net sales, gross profit, operating income, and net income. So basically for the LBS Bina, based on the trend analysis, next slide. Okay, it can be seen that there is much more difference in 2019 and 2020, whereby you can see that for the net sale and operating income, it showed a decrease in 2020. And for 2019, it showed a decrease in gross profit and net income. So basically, for the net sales for the year 2019 had a higher ratio, which is 0.13% shown in the graph, than the year 2020, which recorded 0.11%. As for the gross profit, in the year 2020, it had a slightly higher ratio with 29.83% than the year 2019, which recorded 28.01%. As for the operating income as well, a higher ratio can be recorded and seen in the year 2019, where it was seen as 16.18%, than the year 2020, which had recorded 0.12% of ratio. With this, it can be clearly seen that the increasing graph of trend analysis for both years had actually declined at its operating income, but the year 2020 showed a bigger difference than 2019. This situation can be clearly seen from the LBS Bina Group's graph that it has improved for the year 2020 when its net income actually had increased to 6.80 as per the graph recorded, which was slightly higher than the year 2019, which recorded 6.68%. And this caused the trend analysis graph for the LBS Group Bina to show a slight increase in the year 2020. So the next slide. So for the next slide, I'll be talking about the trend analysis of KSL. Also, we have did the trend analysis based on 4 main points: the net sale, gross profit, operating income, and net income. The next slide. So basically, this trend analysis for KSL can be seen clearly that 2019 and 2020 varies clearly, whereby in 2020, everything from the main 4 points decreases in income, and 2019, everything increased. One of the main reason is because of the pandemic, which is happening now. So based on the graph, it can be seen that the net sales for the year 2019 had a higher ratio, which is 0.71% than the year 2020, which recorded 0.34%. And as per the gross profit as well, the year 2019 actually had a slightly higher ratio with 60.55% than the year 2020, which actually recorded 53.06%. As per the operating income as well, a higher ratio had been seen and recorded for the year 2019 of 45.45% than the year 2020, which had actually a negative ratio, which is negative 15.18%. With this, it can be clearly seen that the increasing graph of trend analysis of both years for KSL Holding Berhad had actually declined at its operating income. But the year 2020 had actually showed a bigger difference than 2019, whereby because it had shown a negative ratio of operating income, mostly because of the pandemic that happened, and that was the big reason for the decline. So this situation has improved and improvised slightly for the year 2020, when its net income actually had increased to negative 8.63. Also, when we say it's a negative ratio, it can be seen that because of the pandemic, although it was negative, but it was an improvement based on 2 years. So this negative 8.63%, which was still lower than the year 2019, which recorded 35.08%. And this caused the trend analysis graph of this particular company, which is the KSL Holding Berhad, to show slightly increase in the year 2020. So I'll be passing on to the next speaker.
Okay, so thank you, Pavitra. Now I'll continue to the cross-section analysis. So as we can see in this table, that we will be talking about the liquidity ratio first. So we'll go through with the current ratio, which is the first ratio that is done for LBS Group as well as KSL. So that's the difference. It is the same year, 2020, but it's just that the difference between two companies. Okay, so looking at the first one, the current ratio of LBS Group is 1.35 and KSL is 9.28. Okay, so the current ratio, it's whether they can convert their assets into cash or not. Okay, so for LBS, they are relatively weaker compared to KSL company. So however, LBS company is likely to notice the sales trend during the years if LBS, okay, so however, it will be a great help for them if they can make some minor adjustment to their company, because if they were to target to the youngsters, for example, age 20 to 30 and above, that is affordable to buy the houses, so they can provide with those minimalist houses, so they would be more interested. So hence it will increase their assets. So that is when their assets can also increase and change it into cash whenever they're in times of needs. So now moving on towards the second ratio, which is the quick ratio. So it can be seen that the ratio of LBS company is 0.54 and KSL is 2.87. So according to the cross-sectional analysis, that the LBS is at advantage as their liquidity of their current assets can be paid off, okay, for the current liabilities. Okay, so that is when the company would not need to liquidate their inventory if they are unable to pay off their current liabilities. For instance, okay, I am unable to pay off my current liabilities, then I have to change the inventory into cash in order to liquidate and continue to ensure that my company is running smoothly. Okay, so moving on to the next part, which is inventory turnover. So in this section, we can see that for inventory turnover, LBS is at 0.81 and KSL is at 0.18. Okay, so these are recorded in terms of how many times their stock have been turned over. Okay, so in comparison, the stock over that is being turned in LBS is higher than KSL. Okay, so looking at the situation, it can be seen that the sales of LBS is higher as compared to KSL. Okay, so it can be deduced that the sales of KSL is not as good because the inventories are not as high as LBS. So for instance, if KSL has lesser sales, so they do not need to think of a way to increase their sales to have a higher turnover of inventory so that they can gain more revenue besides being during the pandemic time as of now. Okay, so moving to the total asset turnover. In this comparison, the total asset turnover of LBS is at 0.83, while it is at 1.1 at KSL. So now we will look at the comparison. It can be seen that asset turnover of LBS is lower than KSL. LBS is not generating, I would say, sufficient volume of business provided so that its total investment is low. Okay, they should sell some of the assets and generate more sales to improve the company's performance. That is the suggestion that we could give for the company to improve their performance. So moving on to the average collection period. So in this section, it can be seen that comparison of the average collection period is higher than KSL. Okay, so meaning that KSL will need to wait up till 68 days in order to gain their receivables by the customers. However, for LBS, they will need to wait for only 3 days to get back the receivables from their customer. So it is important that the company identify how long they would be able to get back their receivables so that they are able to plan and to allocate the amount of money to replace the receivables if they are unable to get back money. Moving on to receivable turnover. Okay, so in this section, the receivable turnover of LBS is lower than KSL, whereby LBS is at 0.83, KSL is at 3.81. So from here, it can be seen that the receivable turnover from KSL is better because the amount of receivables turnover from KSL can be collected, which is more than LBS at 2.91, meaning the difference is at 2.91. So for example, LBS company would need to improve their collection with their consumer as per compared to KSL company. Okay, so moving on to the next part, which is the profitability ratio. So it's how much they are able to earn. Okay, looking at LBS and KSL for gross profit margin. LBS is at 29.83% and KSL is at 53.06%. So LBS company will want to work on this in order to gain more cash to pay for their indirect costs or their other costings. For instance, when LBS company would like to pay for their own owners' interest or expenses, they might be unable to convert it to cash. So however, KSL company is able to do so. So this is the difference for LBS and KSL. So looking to net profit margin is that due to the pandemic, okay, we can see that the company's operating profit margin is low. So looking at the figure, LBS company has higher profit margin compared to KSL as they're having a negative profit margin, which means they're unable to have extra income after having their revenue or their loss. So for LBS company, it is at 12 and KSL is at a negative 15.18. Okay, they're at a negative value. So however, KSL company would be suggested to think of other alternatives to improve their sales strategy or even how to improve themselves even so that they can work back up the ladder to be timely with their competitors in the market, even with the COVID-19 being around us. So looking at the next part, which is the profit margin of both of the companies. Okay, it is clear that LBS is much higher than KSL, which is LBS is gaining more profit as at the end of the day, the net profit margin is at 6.82% compared to KSL, which is at a negative 8.63%. Hence, it can be seen that LBS company is doing much better than the KSL company because they're having more profit. So KSL definitely would have to think about a better strategy so they're not going to be excluded by this company. So moving on to the next part, which is the return of asset. Oh, I'm sorry, I think there's a mistake in the presentation slides, whereby for the total asset turnover, it's supposed to be returns on asset. So the return on asset, I'll move on first. Looking at the calculation of the return of asset, it can be said that the asset that the company LBS invested in has brought them a good amount of revenue because they are having a 5.62 of revenue as well as, but KSL is having a negative of 1.92. So the amount of return on asset for LBS company is much more profitable than KSL. So looking on the next part, which is the return on equity. Return on equity here. Okay, so in this section, the return here, the return on equity, yes, the return on equity for LBS company is higher compared to KSL. So investors in KSL company might want to rethink if they are still interested in investing because their company is at a low time in terms of generating cash. So lastly, for the leverage ratio, which is debt ratio and also the time interest earned. So for LBS and KSL, the debt ratio is 0.18 and 9.17. Okay, so KSL, for example, KSL is unable to pay for their loan and their rental. It is because of the debt ratio that is really high. However, LBS will be able to pay their loan as well as their rental. So KSL, what can they do is that KSL should quickly find for their investors, or they can inject in capital. If not, they would be in a tight spot in terms of debt. So they wouldn't be able to return their debt. So now moving on to the time interest earned. Okay, so looking at the time interest earned, it can be seen that the time interest for LBS is lower as compared to KSL. So the computed amount of time interest for LBS is 3.06 and for KSL is 4.39. So looking at it generally, it can be deduced that both of the company is at ratio of 2.5 and above. Usually it would be acceptable, meaning it is acceptable for the investors to invest in the company. So the more acceptable one among the two companies would be KSL because their risk is lower and they are able to pay back their debt with its current income. So I'll pass it on to the next presenter, which is Tasita, to continue with our conclusion. Thank you.
So I'll present about the conclusion from the analysis. Based on the result of the analysis, we predict that LBS will be outperform KL 2019 and 2020. LBS group outperformed KL Holdings Berhad in most ways, which is strong reason for others to select LBS Bina Group. Reduced costs connected with the production of affordable housing would boost the pace and scale of delivery of affordable housing projects by implementing cost saving and productivity enhancing technology. So LBS Group will be more suitable for higher quality home construction. Next slide. So last part, which is recommend which company are the best company to invest. So we recommend investing in LBS company since it has over 20 years of experience. Not only that, LBS Bina Group has successful track record in property development, property management, property investment, and more. Not only that, LBS recover their debts more effectively than KSL Holdings. In addition, it has greater return on equity than KSL. Lastly, it can provide better return on investors than KSL company. So this is why we recommend LBS Bina Group place to invest for higher return. So yeah, thank you.